This podcast / docuseries is going to be about the early stages of my life from the time I was born to 8th grade, and just to give people a better idea of some of the situations I went through, struggles, milestone moments, and just memories or situations that had an impact on shaping the future version of myself.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess-ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
In today's episode, we're joined by Edward, who will be taking us through the early stages of his life, from birth to 8th grade. We'll explore the struggles, milestone moments, and memories that have shaped him. Edward, can you describe your family dynamic? How did you and your family interact with each other during your childhood?
Okay, so I know that, when I was born and stuff, there was a little bit of chaos because my grandfather, my mom's dad, didn't like my dad, didn't want him around. So I lived with my grandparents when I was born, and there was a lot of chaos because my dad was trying to figure things out, didn't have a job, just kind of struggling. They were 18, 19 years old when they had me, and just a lot of uncertainty. So early childhood spent growing up at my grandparents' house, and definitely know that my family was supportive, meaning not only my mother, but my aunts were there to help pick up the slack to help raise me in the early years of childhood.
What's the relationship with you and your grandparents?
I've always considered my grandfather as another father. He was a pivotal figure in my life. Same thing with my grandmother, just very close. So I consider her like another mom. And so it was a very close dynamic relationship. I spent a lot of time with them. Almost it seems like growing up, I spent every weekend at their house. And we only lived about 10 blocks away. But that was like home for me. That was like a safe place for me.
Do you have any fun, special memories with your grandparents?
Yeah, fun memories for me were going to the liquor store with my grandpa, walking over to the store, going and getting tamales from the tamale place down the street, driving to the store with him. And with my grandmother, it was definitely, every year she would go to Mexico. And I got to go on a lot of those trips where I would spend the summer with her in Mexico and traveling through the different states, visiting family over there. And that was very memorable because I really got close to my grandmother, even though I was very rambunctious, kind of like the Mexican version of Dennis the Menace. But yeah, that really sealed, the deal is I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house.
Were you a happy child?
I was a happy child, I didn't lack like the necessities. I had some extravagant birthdays, and I looked back at photo albums, and there were ponies and there were clowns and there were big parties. And then just the dynamic of just spending time with cousins, and we had such a big family that there were always events going on. And we celebrated all the holidays. 4th of July was a big spectacle, and Christmas was big, and even Halloween. And all the birthdays, it was big. There were big birthday parties and so forth. So I remember a lot of bonding time with my cousins and so forth.
You mentioned having a sibling. Could you share the age gap between you two? Also, how did your experience change when you transitioned from being an only child to having a younger sibling after 10 years?
That, I wanted that. I had wanted a brother or sister for the longest time, and I remember asking my parents for years. And I know they tried and they had some struggles, but that's something that I did always want, was a brother or sister. And when he came, then I was excited to be a big brother.
As I understand, you spent your childhood in two distinct neighborhoods, Compton and Puente. Could you describe the environments and communities of these areas and how they influenced your upbringing?
Okay. And actually, so I grew up in Compton up until I was about 14. And so Compton, California, which was notorious for gang violence and, of course, all the gangster rap that was born from it, Eazy and NWA. So Also grew up at a time where racism was still prevalent. And, I was fortunate that my family didn't participate in racism. Growing up with minorities, we're minorities, was just a normal part. There was a lot of racism because when my grandparents moved there in the 1940s/50s, it was a Jewish community. Compton, California was Jewish, and it was a middle class community. And then gradually, as it started shifting, became more of an African American community, and then eventually the Hispanics started moving in and so forth. So there was a lot of turmoil and conflict between the two races, unfortunately, and because of that, gang violence was rampant, and a lot of gang violence, violence, race against race. So, the Hispanics against the African Americans against the Hispanics, and so forth. So it was unfortunate that was something ongoing for many years. Even when we moved out of there, it was just a common, in Compton, that was probably one of the most dangerous cities for years and years. And that's what it was known for. It was known for gang violence and just the murder capital of the world.
Could you tell us about the specific moment or factors that led your parents to decide on moving away from Compton?
I don't remember the dynamic of how it happened, but we were living at my grandmother's house, and I believe she wanted her house back, is what it was. And both sets of grandparents lived in Compton, on different sides of town. And each side carried its own dynamic, its own problems, its own different gangs. And I know for my grandparents, on my mom's side, we lived on a side that was predominantly dominated by the black gangs. And then on my grandmother's side, we lived on the side that was predominantly dominated by Hispanic gangs. So very, very mixture. It was almost like two different worlds. And I remember we moved to an apartment, and actually before we moved to La Puente, we spent 3 years in Bell. So Bell, which was by Huntington Park, Maywood, and so forth. And that's where I spent my middle school years. So my elementary school years were in Compton, and then transitioned out into middle school, and then into Bell.
Could you describe your experiences during middle school?
Middle school was just normal. I wasn't like a super academic student. I wasn't really involved in too many activities. I just kind of stayed under the radar. And just did what I needed to do. At that point, by middle school, I had big dreams and aspirations of what I wanted to do. And one of the big things that growing up was I always wanted to be a police officer. So that was kind of like front and center, from watching these episodes, Chips with Eric Estrada, Punch, or there was another show called SWAT. I was like mesmerized by it, and even growing up when we lived in Compton, I used to love playing cops and robbers. But we're playing cops and robbers, I always had to be on the good side, the police. I could never be on the bad side. So and I wouldn't play if I had to be the robber. I'd refuse.
That's interesting. Circling back to your early school years, you mentioned a memorable incident involving a spelling bee. Could you elaborate on that experience?
Yeah, so second grade, Mrs. Matthews' class, entered a spelling bee. And that was a very important moment in my early childhood years, because I remember me and my mom practiced night after night. I want to say for at least a month, maybe longer. And it almost seemed like hours every day, just practicing and practicing for the spelling bee, because I wanted to win. Like I was set on winning the spelling bee. And man, my mom just kept at it, and we practiced and practiced. And then I remember the day of the spelling bee, everybody got eliminated. It came down to me and my neighbor across the street. Her name was Margaret. And we spelled it out, and I fucking devastated her, Sorry, Margaret. It was, and it hurt kind of too, because that was my best friend. At the same time, like I won, And it was just all that practice that it was a real strong bonding moment for me and my mom, because man, we practiced for hours, and that was that trophy. It was this cool trophy. That was a trophy that me and my mom earned together, because she was right there with me along for the journey. So that was a very pivotal moment for me too. Really kind of, well, not even kind of, it showed me that hard work pays off. That if you really want something bad enough, that if you practice and you go after it, then you can accomplish it, you can make it happen. And I think that was a very crucial moment for me that showed me that hard work pays off, or if you want something bad enough, you can achieve it. You just can't let any distractions get in your way.
Now, how old were you?
I was probably 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so second grade, so yeah, 6 or 7 years old.
That's really cool. So
I still think we have the trophy somewhere in the garage, believe it or not. So,
Given your mom's significant presence in your pivotal moments, from Little League to academics, can you share more about how her support shaped your experiences growing up?
yes. Mom was pretty much mom and dad, you know. Dad wasn't around too much. He was distracted with other things. Can't say that we didn't go on family vacations, because we did go on family vacations. He had a camper, so we toured a lot of states, you know, Arizona, Montana, Washington. So there's memories there, but a lot of the pivotal moments, Little League and karate and school academics, my mom was the one that showed up. She's the one that was there a majority of the time. And yeah, she was, you know, my number one fan, my number one cheerleader.
I heard there was an incident involving your mom and a nun during your school days. Could you tell me more about what happened?
Yes. So, you know, I went to Birch Elementary School in Compton, and it's funny because when I started kindergarten, I would say, I know I cried, I know my mom cried, and I think we were so close that she went and got a job at the school district, and from kindergarten on, she stayed working at the school district for like 40 years. So the years that I was in elementary school, she was there at the school as an instructional aide. She did different positions, ESL and so forth, but from kindergarten on, she got a job at that school, and she never left, and was there, I think, like almost 40 years at the same school. So I always say that she never wanted to let me go. So, but getting back to that story about the nun, there was a point where they wanted me to go to Catholic school, so St. Albert the Great in Compton, and just for better education or, I don't know, discipline. I was rambunctious. But one of the things is it was an old school type of Catholic school where it was run by nuns, and very strict, where they paddled you. And actually, kind of going back, at Birch, there was a principal named Mr. Norris. They paddled you too. When you didn't do your homework, or when you were out of line and so forth, they would paddle you in the principal's office. And that frickin' paddle had the holes right there. And when they frickin' got it, whew, it just went right through the air, and you would get cracked in the principal's office. So there were a couple times where I got paddled, not only in the principal's office at in elementary school, at public school, but also Catholic school. But in Catholic school, the nuns would just do it in the classroom. Like, they were freaking hardcore fucking mean. So, sorry, they were mean. Well, the ones I had were mean. And what happened was, I wouldn't finish my food. And so, I'd get food, and then it was a requirement that you had to finish your food. And I was full. And so they would force me to eat my food. And if I didn't finish it, well, I never could not finish it. I had to stay there and finish it. I couldn't go out to recess. And I remember going home and crying to my mom because I couldn't participate in recess, but also they would make me eat all my food, and to the point where I would get sick. Man, my mom was gangster. My mom was like, this shit is not happening. Like, I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to, I could just think what was going to her mind, but pretty much she was going to go beat the shit out the nun. at, right in front of the church. But yeah, my mom was gangster. Like she was, like hardcore when it came to me. Like she was going to protect me at all costs. And I remember she went into the classroom and man, the verbal altercation happened and we're sitting here and all the kids are there. And I'm like, yep, instead of being embarrassed or I was like, hell yeah, Mom, like, and she freaking told her off. They got in an argument and I thought mom was going to take her down, take off her nun outfit and just beat her. Fortunately, well, maybe a little bit deep down inside, I wanted her to beat her a little bit, just because of all the trauma that the nun, inflicted on me. But from that day forward, I never had to eat all my food again. And I don't know what the end result was. I need to ask her what happened, but that nun never bothered me again after that. And then eventually, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy at Catholic school and pulled me out. And then I went back to I begged to go back to Birch Elementary, which is public school in Compton, because I just was not happy at Catholic school. And we were in uniforms and so forth. And it was very rigid, very structured. And yeah, definitely Catholic school was not one of the best experiences for me growing up.
When did you relocate to La Puente?
La Puente came when I was graduating 8th grade. So I didn't move to La Puente until I was almost 14 years old.
Can you recall any significant events or turning points that happened during your 8th grade year?
8th grade, I just kind of stayed under the radar. I didn't have all these girlfriends or anything. And it was just yeah. There was something that I went to Nimitz Junior High School in Bell. And a cool thing about it is we were on tracks. So it was a year-round school. So what happened was I was on track A and I went to school from August to December. And then I had January, February, and March off. I went back around March to June, and then I was off for the summer. So there was track A, B, and C. And the reason we were on tracks is because it was such a big population, and there weren't a lot of schools to service the community. And this school was almost like a college campus. It went across the street. There were 3-story buildings. It was a gigantic campus. And I remember I was there was something called the Commanders. And the Commanders were a bunch of kids at lunchtime. You had the responsibility to guard the doors to make sure kids didn't come in during lunchtime. And so we were called Commanders. And then we had supervisors, like Commander supervisors. So a big part of my 8th grade year was wanting to be a part of the Commanders. And you had your jacket and so forth. And you would monitor the hallways to make sure kids went in there because they didn't want vandalism and so forth. So that was a cool part because I wanted to be a police officer. And so this was my way of exerting some authority, And, if you weren't a part of ASB, being a part of the Commanders was the next big thing because it carried some clout and some power. And used to leave class 10 minutes early to go man the doors. And yeah, it was pretty cool. You had some benefits too. You carrying that card, you could walk around and go to the restroom when you wanted and weren't questioned. So, yeah, that was a cool moment. But, one of the most traumatizing moments was in 8th grade, I had someone that started picking on me. Probably a couple of months before we graduated, and he just got in my head, and I knew that, and I'd been in Taekwondo and karate and had all these belts and so forth, and I know deep down inside that I could have probably beat the shit out of him, but he just got to me he got so much in my head that he traumatized me to a point I was bullied. I was bullied every day for a couple of months, and that really started a cycle that led to a lot of chaos and destruction as I gravitated into high school. So 2 months before I was going to graduate, my parents bought a house in La Puente, and my mom said, no, you only have 2 months left. I'm going to drive you every day from La Puente to school so you can finish up school there. And that kid had traumatized me so much. I did not want anything to do with even graduating, even though I'd gone there the last 3 years. I wanted out. And because of him, I pretty much demanded, begged, forced my mom to check me out of Nimitz Junior High School, and enrolled me in the junior high school in La Puente, which was Sparks Middle School. And that was interesting because you get to the first day, and then La Puente at that time in the 80s, 86, 87, was a start of a lot of gang violence that exploded in the San Gabriel Valley. And a big core of it came from the La Puente area. And the junior high school and the high school had a gigantic gang population, talking about like hundreds and hundreds of gang members. And because of that bullying, that started my journey into gangs. And it's because I never wanted to be that scared kid again. I never wanted to be picked on. So I chose to align myself with, and there were two ways to align yourself. Either you were a jock, so you were in sports, so you kind of got left alone, or you gravitated towards, gangs. And I wasn't a jock. I didn't, God didn't gift me with these physical abilities to be a superstar. So I chose, unfortunately, the path of gangs. And that was to, I didn't want to be that scared kid anymore. I didn't ever want to feel what I felt those last 2-3 months when I was in junior high school. But that, that brings up there's a moment in junior high school where there was a teacher. And it was I want to say it was 7th or 8th grade, but it was in a physical science class. And the teacher was a jackass. He was an asshole. And he would always pick on me. And I remember one day he grabbed there was a picture, and in front of the class he said, "Oh, Edward, this is your mom," in class. And I cussed him out and actually was going to fight him. And of course I got in trouble and I got suspended. But there my mom goes again, sitting there and fighting for me, for him to embarrass me in front of the class. But I literally, actually, now that I think about it, I believe I attacked him. And I got in trouble for it. I got suspended and stuff. But it was because he was confrontational with me and made fun of my mom. And like my mom was like off limits. Like that's the one thing is you don't talk about my mom. I don't care what. Like that was fighting words. We were going to go at it. But yeah, that was another moment in junior high school that just triggered when you asked about any pivotal moments. That right there was something where I did get suspended and almost expelled. But my mom fought to keep me in school. So it was always my mom coming to the rescue whenever I was in trouble. Elementary school, junior high school, even high school. Like she was the one dealing with all the bullshit, all the chaos that I went through. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode of Fatherhood Voices, Breaking the Toxic Cycle. Now, we have a special gift for you. If you're enjoying the episode, you can go ahead and go to edwardrodarte.com/toolbox, and you can go ahead and request a summary of the podcast. Now, the neat thing about this is not only does it have the key takeaways and it gets straight to the core of the message of the podcast, but it also gives you some great takeaways along with some exercises that you can start to do in order to heal and rebuild the relationship with your children.
You mentioned having Tourette's. Did any of your tics lead to bullying when you were younger?
I did. I've had Tourette's all my life. I like to say I purged it out in ceremony. But growing up, when I was young in elementary school, I'll tell you a moment that stands out. I would get punished for these tics, the coughs or moving my head, like a hacking cough, roaring my eyes. So I would get grounded. I would get punished. Because my mom, my aunts, my family didn't understand. They thought I was just, they were bad habits. And I remember even being bribed by my aunt, Chayo, and my mom, that if you stop doing these tics, well, they didn't even call them tics because they didn't know they were tics, they would buy me a guitar. So they bought me a guitar because I was taking guitar lessons when I was in Catholic school. But they said, we'll buy you this guitar, but you have to stop doing these tics. Well, they didn't call them tics, so bad habits. And, but I couldn't stop it. And a funny thing is, I didn't realize that I had Tourette's, even though I had all my life. My family, my parents were uneducated about it, about, Tourette's. And, you didn't have the internet to Google, or, like these different things. The doctors never diagnosed it. But it wasn't until my daughter, Alyssa, when she was probably 6 or 7 years old, that she was having a lot of extreme tics, that we finally got her diagnosed at Kaiser, and they said, no, she has Tourette's. And that's hereditary. That comes from either the mother or the father. And then we put two and two together, and all my life I'd had Tourette's, and I thought it was just these bad habits I had, but it had been a Tourette's all along. And unfortunately, because my family wasn't educated enough on this, Tourette's, I suffered a lot for it. I suffered a lot of punishment, from a sense of being grounded because of something I couldn't control. So, especially now for parents out there that have kids with Tourette's, just know that it's a struggle. Even up until a couple of years ago, when I would be in meetings when I worked in corporate America, I would literally have to sit in the back of the room, and I was literally fighting with my mind to try not to allow my tics to take over. I think now, subconsciously, my brain's programmed that it knows how to control it. When stressful situations hit, it still comes out. But for many years, that was always at the forefront, having to try to control my tics, or not having, neck movement, or the cough, or the roar in the eyes. And I'm fighting with my mind, trying to control it. Literally trying to be in a meeting, trying to participate, but trying to control these tics. So it's rough. So for someone that's never experienced Tourette's or tics, it's a battle. It's an inner battle with yourself. And just be gracious with your kids or people that run across it, because the slightest things can trigger it. And once it triggers, it's hard to stop. Like, it's going to stop when it stops, but it's just a part of the journey that I was on. I didn't have the, the funny tics. I call them the funny tics. They're not funny. But we have a lot of verbal outbursts. I was able to kind of control that, maybe like a little bit of sound movement. But the one thing that did come into play was the anger. One of my tics was just outburst of anger. Outburst. A lot of my anger came from the Tourette's, and I know it came from frustration. It came from frustration of not being able to stop my neck movement, or the coughs, or the roaring of the eyes, or the movements, the hand movements, because I was always trying to control it. And it's almost like you can drive yourself insane in the process, trying to control it, because you're trying to still function, but you're trying not to be the center of attention, because you're fucking moving around all over the place. So yeah, it was it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle.
I heard you initially wanted to be a police officer. How did you end up becoming an entrepreneur with various side hustles instead?
I was about 9 or 10 years old when I started. Well, let me go back, because the earliest moment I can remember of being an entrepreneur was in second grade. And I was probably 5 or 6 years old. I remember going to the store and buying candy and then reselling it at school. We used to have, across the street from the elementary school, there was a candy house. It was a house directly across the street from the playground. When you would get out of school, you could walk over and you could buy candy from the candy house. It was almost like a candy store, but in someone's living room. And I got this idea that, and I don't think my thought at that time was I can, take away competition and market share from the candy house, but I knew that I could make money by buying candy and reselling it at school, like during recess time and during lunchtime. So that's what I started doing. And then I started including those store called Newberry's. It was like a 5 and 10 cent store, kind of like what equivalent would be like Kmart. If there's, if Kmart or Zodi's definitely doesn't exist anymore. But I would go buy these like jewelry packs, maybe like 12 rings for like $2, and take them out and I would resell them for like $1 each and stuff. And I was selling like jewelry and candy and school supplies. And eventually I got in trouble. I got in trouble for selling stuff at school. And it was uncomfortable because my mom worked at the school. So I don't remember what the punishment was or what it was, but I know that I couldn't sell stuff anymore. I think I did still sell stuff after the fact, pencils and erasers and stuff. But I did it more like undercover. So from an early age, the entrepreneurial bug, it hit me because I had my own money. But when I was 9 or 10, when I lived in Compton, me and my neighborhood friends, we would jump on the bus, the Gardena Metro, and we would take it to the rhodium swap meet in Torrance. And we would go work for $15 or $20 for the day. We would go ask around for people that were setting up at the swap meet on Saturdays and Sundays. And, we'd be like, hey, do you need help today setting up? And then, yeah, they would hire you. So picture this. You're 9 or 10 years old. You're going to go and work for 8, 9 hours. The setup and the breakdown, maybe 10 hours. And you're going to get $15 or $20 for the day. And if you're lucky, they're going to buy you lunch. A hot dog and a soda or some fries. But if you were unlucky and you got some cheap ass frickin' vendor, they would buy you lunch and then they would take it out of your goddamn money that you made. So if you only made $15 for the day, these cheap bastards would go ahead and deduct $3 or $4 because they bought your meal, and then you'd end up with $10 or $11. And you're having to set up the canopy. You're having to unload the truck, open up all the boxes, lay out the tables, put the sheets on the tables, put all the product there, and then you're selling all day. And man, if you were dumb enough, because a lot of times you don't know what's in the trucks. They're just driving in and you're going and trying to find some work for the day, right? Man, almost like a day labor, like a child labor, Oh man, my hat's off to them for their tenacity and perseverance. But you don't know most of the time you didn't know what the trucks had because they're just boxes. But shit, if you got to the truck and they hired you for the day and it was a Levi's truck, oh fuck. You want to talk about unpacking thousands of Levi's. Levi's are heavy after a while. And men's and women's, and I'm talking about thousands of pairs, and the Levi's are stacked in 10s or 20s, and you have freaking 10, 12 rows of Levi's. That sucked when you got hired by the people that were selling Levi's. That was probably one of the hardest ones. The easier ones when it was like toys or bikes, because it was easier to set up. But when you got stuck with Levi's or clothes, that there was just so many blouses and shirts and socks, and you had to separate it and break it apart. And then at the end, and then you're standing around all day, and man, there were a lot of Asians that sold. And hats off to the hardworking Asians, but fuck, they were on you. Like, man, you couldn't sit down like, hey, come on, customer. Oh, how can I help you? And you were on your toes all day, selling, and didn't realize that I was gaining these skills. But yeah, man, the Asians taught me a lot because they were relentless about you're on the go, like nonstop, selling. And then sometimes there was a language barrier and trying to interpret and so forth. So yeah, but I definitely learned a lot about hustling at a very early age. And but yeah, it sucked when you rolled up to a truck and it was a clothing truck because you were going to work your ass off for the day. But the cool thing about it was I had my own money. So at an early age, I was able to buy, the big thing. It wasn't Nikes, it was British Nike shoes or Adidas, DJ equipment. So I remember buying, I always had like the coolest shoes, and I bought my own DJ equipment. I bought like remote control cars. So it's not that we lacked. I mean, we weren't rich and weren't like super poor, but my parents provided. But there weren't a lot of the luxury stuff like that. I had to get on my own. And having my own money, I was able to buy what I wanted to. I was in control. And, from that sparked my, I remember there was a insert in a magazine. I'd always get these magazines on making money. And there was a company called SMC. I'll never forget it. Specialty Merchandise Corporation out of Chatsworth. And it was a business in a box toolkit. And I was like 12 or 13 years old, and I saw like you could make this money by selling products. And what it was it was a whole toolbox on basically selling products to family and friends door to door. And you got these color glossy catalogs, and it had thousands of items. It had statues and figurines and Tiffany lamps and stuff for your car, and you name it, it was in there. And then you would have 3 different sheets: the white sheet, the gold sheet, and the pink sheet. And each one had different pricing. One had retail pricing, one had wholesale pricing, one had distributor pricing. And you would pick the pricing, and based off of that, your profit margins. And so you look at the catalog. So I take it to my aunts, like, oh, I want this Tiffany lamp, I want these figurines. And then I would decide like what I was going to charge them based on the 3 different layers of pricing. But it was a whole toolkit on how to sell. And then you'd order, you'd send in the money, and then the product would come. And that really got me going. So it was like the old school Amazon at a very early age is what it was. And all the products were in this beautiful catalog. And you would get a couple, then you'd pass them along. And then as the catalogs would get updated. And I remember going door to door and selling to my aunts. And and I made some money that way. So at an early age, making money was, became big for me. And, I do got to bring up, when I go to Mexico with my grandma, I would go, so true story. My grandma will testify to this. I would set up a table in front of my aunt's house, and I would go to the dulceria, which is a candy store, and I would buy candy in bulk. And I would come and set up a table in Mexico, in the little town, and I would sell candy from the front of the house and make money that way. And then with that money, I would go buy illegal fireworks to shoot off that night. So yeah, the entrepreneurial bug started at a very early age, but it was once I got that bug of being able to make money, having my own money, it just stuck, and that carried me on from an early age all the way into adulthood.
It's interesting to hear how you evolved from being a young hustler to being influenced by motivational books and then moving into business. Can you share more about how this transition happened and the impact of those books on your business journey?
The motivational books, yes. So those damn inserts in the magazine. There was Columbia House Records used to have this deal, and the deal was you could get 12 books for a penny, and then 1 free bonus one. I think that was the offer. And not only did they have it for cassettes and albums, but it was also for books. And I stumbled onto motivational books. Harvey Mackay, Swim with the Sharks, and Tony Robbins, and a bunch of other early motivational speakers. Oh my gosh. Let's see, Jim Rohn. I stumbled onto these at probably the age of like 11 or 12, maybe 13. And audio, it was a combination of audio tapes and books. And I just started devouring it. And that really shifted the programming inside of me that I could do anything I wanted to do. And from there, it really started my entrepreneurial bug to the next level.
We just experienced an unexpected call from Edward's mom during our live session. It's not every day that we get such a direct and personal insight into our guest's background. Let's take a moment to listen to this heartwarming conversation.
Okay. Hey, Ma. How you doing? Three quick questions for you.
What's the question?
We're doing a podcast on from the time I was born to junior high school. What are 3 moments or memories that you remember that stand out about me? I already did the spelling bee. I did, you wanted to beat up the nun.
Yes.
Getting punished for my tics. And then Chayo and you buying a guitar for me if I didn't do my tics.
No, but we didn't buy the guitar just for not doing your kids.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was.
Put it towards the mic.
yeah, well, you know what? It
Yeah,
probably
that's my
was,
mom.
you probably remember more than me, yeah.
You guys bribed me with the guitar if I wouldn't make my grunty noises and tics.
Yeah, okay.
And then, but then I couldn't stop. But we didn't know what it was. But
No,
yeah,
we didn't know at that time, yeah.
because that's when I was.
It's a habit.
Yeah, that was bad habits. But then I was taking guitar lessons, and then they wouldn't let me go because I only had like a little guitar. And then that was part of the bribe was, okay, we'll buy you this guitar, but you have to stop doing these tics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the thing was también because you want an electric guitar, remember?
I don't, probably.
I said, yeah, you want an electric guitar. And I said, no, I cannot buy you an electric guitar because you have to learn how to play the regular guitar before I get you an electric guitar. I do remember. Okay, and that was one of the things because that you wanted an electric one, and I said no, we're gonna get you. I said a regular guitar until you learn how. When you learn how to play the regular guitar, then we get you an electric guitar. I do remember.
Okay. So
So
what are 2 or 3 moments that you remember from my childhood that stand out for you?
For me, what that the spelling bee, and all that, and when you were gonna beat up the teacher or whatever with the bat. Remember when they were bullying you, right there in Bell?
Yes, because he made fun of you.
He made fun.
That's right. I forgot. I fucking got a bat. Okay.
So how you got a bat, and the kids were making fun of you, and you got a bat, and that's what they called me.
That's right. I forgot about the bat. Yeah.
That one. And you were gonna hit him with a bat.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was gonna hit him with the bat.
And the spelling bee, and what else? I can't. Let's remember what else. You want to go? You want things, bad things or good things?
Either one.
No, because I remember when we moved from. You used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, so Grandpa could take you to go work.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I talk about. Yeah. Oh, that's right. He would take me to work,
Yeah.
or I would take the bus to go. Yeah.
You would, I will pick you up. I used to pick you up. And then, también cuando we moved to Bell, first thing you want to go do, you want to go get a job in the fish store.
The fish store. That's
Remember?
right. I was like in 6th grade. I went to go get a job at a fish store.
Yeah.
Just after talking to your mom, I wanted to ask, how did you get into karate?
So at an early age, I wanted to, because I wanted to go in law enforcement and so forth, I wanted to defend myself. So Bruce Lee was like a big idol of mine. So they enrolled me at a dojo in Compton. But this dojo was hardcore, very physical. They like physically abused us. And I'll tell you the extreme of it. When you would go and test for a belt, not only was it very physical, and there was a lot of hands-on, but when you would test for your belt, once you proceeded to the next level, they would grab the belt and they would whack you in the stomach. Depending on the level of the belt, that's how many times. So it was very physical, where you were like in tears, and if you cried, they whacked you again. When you were participating in the katas or the different movements, if you messed up, there was physical abuse. It was. I enjoyed the experience, but I didn't because there was a lot of pain that came with it. And it was just, it was a style of that dojo and the instructor. And yeah, so that was pretty traumatic. I got quite a few belts along the way, but yeah, it was traumatic from a physical standpoint. But it did make me stronger in a sense to tolerate pain a lot more. So when I would get in trouble and there was physical punishment, I was able to withstand it more.
So how old were you when you were in the...
Probably maybe about 8 years old to about 10 or 11.
And how far did you go up?
I want to say almost to my black belt. And then I picked up martial arts again later on in my late teen years into early adulthood.
In addition to karate, did you take part in any other sports?
Oh, yes. My Little League career. Oh, let me tell you about my Little League career. I want to say I was 8 or 9 years old. I wanted to play Little League. It was a cool thing to do, right? And so my mom enrolled me at the park. Went, got all my gear. I'm out on the field. First day. Fucking kid you not. First day. Out there. Boom. We're in practice. A pop fly. I go to catch it. I go. Miss it. Bam. Black eye. Freaking cried. Done. I quit. The only time in life I quit. I probably have trauma because that's the only thing I quit in life and never went back to. I ended my Little League career in one day. Big bulging eye. Mom tried to make me go back. Wasn't going to happen. I believe my aunt, grandpa tried to. Wasn't happening. My one-day career in Little League. Yeah. That's probably one of the things that I do regret is not going back and getting back on the horse per se. But yeah, I had a one-day Little League career that ended with a pop fly that gave me a black eye. And the other thing I participated was I was in Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts, I was a Weblo or Wolverine or Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. But that was pretty cool because got to do a lot of fun activities and go camping and so forth. So that's an early childhood memory that I enjoyed, getting the patches and so forth and going to the jamborees. So I remember one of the hosts of the jamborees that we had, this big Boy Scout jamboree. I believe it was like in Torrance at some regional park. And there was Ricardo Montalban from Fantasy Island. So he came out and he was a Grand Marshal. I don't know if Tattoo came though, the little Hawaiian guy Tattoo. I don't know if he was there. He was always pretty cool. But I know Ricardo Montalban was the head of ceremonies, and that was a cool moment because Fantasy Island, which was a pretty cool show back in the day, was at its peak. But yeah, that's another memory is being in the Boy Scouts of America.
We've discussed how your mom has been a big part of your life. Do you have any fond memories involving your father that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there are good memories. Can't say I had a lot of memories of him playing ball with me or teaching me how to change a tire or stuff like that. But the one thing, and then he was a hard worker. But then when weekends came around, it was that alcohol and his friends that sidetracked him. So don't have a lot of typical norm fatherhood memories that you would have. I know he was present, but I don't know that he was that present. But I do know that every year we would take a family vacation, and maybe twice a year. And he had this little 6-pack trailer, and you climb in the back, had his little kitchen and beds, and we would go on the road, and went to the Grand Canyon. We went to some Flintstone Village in Arizona, or we went to the Crystal Caverns in Mexico. Went to Washington. I think we even went to Canada. But we would travel. We would go fishing and shooting. So those memories, looking back on it now, were priceless because I got to travel cross country. And it was neat because, we grew up in Compton, and a lot of my friends didn't have a lot because it was a very uh, low income poverty, community. So having a camper was a luxury, and being able to travel was a luxury. So those are probably my biggest memories, my most memorable ones, is going out to other states. And at that point, I remember he was present. So maybe it was not having the distractions of, my dad was a hard worker. He was a hard worker. I'll give him that. But I don't really recall memories of him, like I said, playing catch and all that stuff. But when we did go on family vacations, I remember that's when those memories were sealed, when we had that one-on-one time.
We recently spoke with your mom during the podcast, and she brought up a story about a bat. Could you share more details about that incident?
She triggered a memory that I had forgotten. And I got the two confused, but then when she shared that was a different incident. There was an incident where a gym teacher was picking on me. And it was every day. And then because he picked on me, I got picked on by other classmates in gym class. And I remember one day I hit a point where I'd had enough, and I grabbed the bat and I chased him with the bat. And then some students wanted to get involved, and I went swinging the bat at them. So I got in a lot of trouble for that, but I just kind of hit that moment where I was done. I was done with the teasing. I was done with being bullied by these kids. It wasn't bullying. It was being teased in gym class, but then it was being bullied by the gym teacher. And I had that moment where I just took the bat and I didn't care. Like I was gonna stop this like once and for all. And yeah, got in trouble, got suspended. But the good thing is it stopped after that. It's unfortunate that sometimes you have to take a bat or resort to physical violence in order to stop bullying or teasing. But that shut down after that moment. And it almost gave me like some street cred, in junior high school. It was, this crazy mother took the bat and was going to beat the gym teacher and some kids that tried to intervene. So yeah, not, funny to look back now, but at the moment it wasn't funny. It was a lot of anger and fighting back, because I was tired of being teased.
As we conclude, do you have any final reflections or key takeaways from your childhood that you'd like to share?
I think we did a good job of covering the most pivotal moments of the early years, from the time I was born to the end of my junior high school years. The only other thing is I was, like I said, I joke about it, but I was like the Mexican version of Dennis the Menace, always getting in trouble, the travieso, the one that mischievous. And looking back on it, I almost feel like I had so much energy and so much inside, people didn't know what to do with it. I was always kind of like in creation mode, or like I got bored real easy. So I was always testing the waters. I was always coloring outside the lines, always challenging the status quo, challenging the rules that my aunt and uncles put in place, or my grandparents or my parents. And I think because of that, I know because of that, that's what helped to create my success as I continued on. But also a big part of that too was a lot of my angry outburst and anger. A lot of it came from my Tourette's, which we didn't understand during that time period. But a lot of the explosiveness, a lot of the tantrums were really tied to my tics. And unfortunately didn't get it diagnosed till years later. 20 years later is when I was diagnosed. So I think looking back, if my parents' family would have had a better awareness of tics and Tourette's, I think it would have really changed some of the dynamics of punishments and groundings that ensued throughout my early childhood years.